I stood at the stove stirring the pasta sauce when Amanda walked in with a cold expression that I had never seen before. 8 years of marriage, and somehow I knew what was coming before she even spoke. When the words finally left her mouth, they still cut deep. "I am moving out tonight. Do not contact me again." I set down the wooden spoon, turned off the burner, and simply replied, "Fine." What she did not know was that I had already started connecting the dots about who I had really been married to all this time. If you are watching this while dealing with betrayal in your own life, drop a comment about where you are from. Also hit that like button and subscribe to join others who understand that sometimes real strength means walking away. Let me share how I discovered this the hard way. I met Amanda at a company holiday party 9 years ago. She worked in the marketing department and I was managing the IT team. There was something magnetic about her laugh that drew me across the crowded room. That night we talked, until security asked us to leave, because they needed to lock up the building. As we stood in the parking lot with snowflakes catching in her dark hair, I knew I wanted to see her again. Our dating phase was a whirlwind of weekend trips, late-night conversations, and planning our future. Within a year, I had proposed on a boat during sunset on Lake Michigan. She cried when she said yes, and I thought I had found my forever person. The wedding was small but perfect, just close friends and family at a vineyard outside the city. I worked 60-hour weeks at my IT management job to afford our first house in a good neighborhood. It needed work, but Amanda had a vision for every room. We spent weekends painting walls and refinishing floors, creating our home together. I bought her a silver SUV for our first anniversary, and she surprised me with a handmade scrapbook of our first year together. "This is just the beginning," she had whispered, and I believed her completely. When Amanda mentioned wanting to pursue an advanced marketing degree, I encouraged her without hesitation. It meant tightening our budget, but her happiness was worth every sacrifice. I took on consulting projects on weekends to help pay for her classes, proud to support her ambitions. Looking back, the first warning signs appeared around our 5th anniversary. Amanda started coming home later, often smelling of wine and wearing a distant expression. When I asked about her day, her answers grew shorter, less detailed. The woman who once called me twice during lunch breaks just to hear my voice now kept her phone face down and password protected. I tried everything to reconnect with her. I planned surprise date nights at restaurants requiring reservations months in advance. I bought thoughtful gifts tied to inside jokes from our early days together. I even suggested marriage counseling, which she reluctantly attended for 3 sessions before claiming it was a waste of time. Our financial situation had always been somewhat unbalanced. I managed all the bills, investments, and major purchases, while Amanda maintained her personal spending accounts. I never questioned her shopping habits or weekend brunches with friends. I wanted her to enjoy the life we were building together without worrying about money. The arguments started small but grew more frequent. She complained that I worked too much, even though my hours funded our lifestyle. I pointed out that she spent less and less time at home, even on weekends. The silences between conversations stretched longer. We stopped finishing each other's sentences and started interrupting instead. One evening I found a receipt for a designer handbag that cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. When I gently asked about it, Amanda accused me of controlling her and stormed out of the house. She returned hours later, apologized tearfully, and things were temporarily better. I wanted to believe it was just a rough patch. The final week before everything fell apart, Amanda seemed especially distant. She spent more time on her phone, smiling at text messages but hiding the screen whenever I entered the room. I tried one last grand gesture, booking a surprise anniversary trip to Hawaii, where we had honeymooned. When I presented her with the envelope containing the tickets, she barely looked at them before setting them aside with a mumbled thanks. That night, I woke up at 2 a.m. to find her side of the bed empty. From the hallway, I could see the blue glow of her phone screen in the living room. She was texting someone, laughing silently in the darkness. When she noticed me watching, she quickly locked the screen and claimed she could not sleep because of work stress. I returned to bed alone, a knot forming in my stomach. The next morning, she left without saying goodbye. I will never forget that final day. I left work early, stopped by the florist to buy her favorite lilies, and decided to make her favorite meal from scratch: butternut squash ravioli with brown butter sage sauce. It took hours to prepare the pasta dough, roast the squash, and carefully fill each ravioli by hand. I had done this for special occasions throughout our marriage, and each time Amanda had raved about it being better than any restaurant version. I set the dining table with our wedding china and crystal wine glasses, lit candles, and put on the playlist from our first date. Everything was perfect when I heard her key in the lock at 7:30. Amanda walked in, took one look at the scene, and her face hardened. She did not even glance at the food or flowers. She just stood in the entryway with her purse clutched tightly against her side. "We need to talk," she said, her voice completely flat. "Dinner is ready," I replied, gesturing to the table. "Whatever it is, we can discuss it over food." She shook her head. "I am not hungry." That was when I noticed she was wearing her most expensive outfit, the one she saved for important client meetings. Her makeup was flawless, and she had recently had her hair done. None of this was for me. "What is going on, Amanda?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She took a deep breath and delivered the words that would end our 8 years together. "I am moving out tonight. Do not contact me again." For a moment I could not process what she was saying. It felt like being hit by a truck on a sunny day. My brain scrambled to make sense of it while my heart already knew the truth. "Can you at least tell me why I managed to ask?" gripping the back of a dining chair to steady myself. "It is not working anymore," she said vaguely. "It has not been working for a long time. And you decided this tonight." Just now, I could hear the edge in my voice. "You did not think we could talk about it first." She shifted uncomfortably. "I have been thinking about it for months. My mind is made up." That was when I noticed the suitcases by the door, high-end luggage we had bought for our 5-year anniversary trip. She had planned this in advance, packing, while I was at work preparing her exit while I was preparing dinner. "Where will you go?" I asked, though I was beginning to suspect the answer. "That is not your concern anymore," she replied coldly. I felt a surge of anger, but forced myself to stay calm. "After 8 years, I think I deserve more of an explanation than, 'It is not working anymore.'" She checked her watch impatiently. "There is nothing more to explain. I will send someone for the rest of my things later this week." While she spoke, my mind raced through recent events, assembling puzzle pieces I had been too trusting to connect. The late nights, the password-protected phone, the increased spending, the emotional distance. "Is there someone else?" I asked directly. Her slight hesitation told me everything. "That is not the point." "It is absolutely the point," I countered. "I have a right to know if my wife is leaving me for another man." Amanda sighed irritably. "This is exactly why this marriage does not work. You always make everything about you." The absurdity of her statement left me speechless. I walked to our shared home office and opened her laptop. We knew each other's passwords, or at least I thought we did. The password had been changed, but she had forgotten to log out of her email. There in her inbox was correspondence with a law firm specializing in divorce. She had consulted them 3 weeks earlier. In that moment, something broke inside me. Not just my heart, but my illusions about our life together. I had worked 60-hour weeks to provide for us. I had supported her education. I had put her career ahead of my own advancement opportunities when she needed to relocate for an internship. I had built my entire life around making her happy. "You know what? Fine," I said when I returned to the living room. "If that is what you want, then go." She looked surprised by my sudden acquiescence, as if she had expected me to beg her to stay. Without another word, she grabbed her suitcases and walked out. After the door closed, I stood in the silent house, staring at the perfectly prepared dinner growing cold on the table. Then I methodically blew out each candle, threw the untouched food in the garbage, and poured myself a large whiskey. That night I could not sleep. I kept thinking about what I might have missed, what signs I had ignored. Around 3 in the morning, I remembered that Amanda and I shared a cloud storage account. I logged in from my phone and began searching through recent files. What I found confirmed my worst suspicions. There were hundreds of text message screenshots between Amanda and someone saved as Jay in her contacts. As I scrolled through them, the full picture emerged in devastating clarity. Jordan Wallace, her boss at the marketing firm, married with 2 children. They had been seeing each other for at least 6 months based on the messages. They had taken a business trip together that I had paid for. They had laughed about me, about how oblivious I was. The most painful message was from 3 weeks ago. "Just wait until you finish the certification next week. Nick has paid for everything, and now you will not need him anymore." Perfect timing. She had stayed just long enough for me to finance the expensive marketing certification program that would advance her career. The program I had worked overtime to afford. The program I had supported her through, making her flashcards and bringing her coffee during late-night study sessions. I threw my phone across the room and finally allowed myself to break down. I did not sleep at all that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw images of Amanda with Jordan. In hotel rooms I had paid for, laughing at text messages while sitting across from me at dinner planning their future. While I planned surprise vacations, the betrayal was total and absolute. I spent hours looking through old photos and reading the anniversary cards she had given me. Each "I love you forever" now seemed like a calculated lie. The memory book she had made for our first anniversary sat open on our bed that now felt enormous and cold without her in it. Around dawn I called my best friend Jason. He had warned me about Amanda years ago, noting how she always seemed to be looking over my shoulder at parties, searching for someone more interesting or influential. I had defended her, then accusing him of jealousy. "She is gone," was all I could say when he answered. Jason came over immediately. As I explained what had happened, his expression shifted from sympathy to anger. "What are you going to do?" he asked, after I finished the story. "I do not know," I admitted. "I feel like my entire life was a fiction." "No," Jason said firmly. "Your marriage might have been based on lies, but your life is still yours, and you need to protect what you have built." His words cut through my emotional fog. I realized that Amanda had been financially dependent on me throughout our relationship. I had paid for our house, our cars, her education. Most of her credit cards were supplementary cards on my accounts. She had never shown much interest in our finances, happy to let me handle the boring details, as she called them. "You need to talk to a lawyer," Jason advised. Today, after he left, I spent the morning making a detailed list of our assets, accounts, and financial entanglements. The picture that emerged was clear. Amanda had enjoyed the benefits of my financial support while contributing minimally. Now that she had the certification I had paid for, she planned to take half of everything we had built together, everything I had worked for. I called a lawyer named Sarah Thompson that morning. She agreed to see me immediately, and by afternoon, I was sitting in her office explaining my situation. Her advice was straightforward. "You need to protect yourself immediately," Sarah explained. "Once she files divorce papers, things get more complicated." "What should I do?" I asked. "First, secure your individual assets. Cancel any supplementary credit cards. Remove her access to joint accounts until the court determines distribution. Document everything, especially evidence of infidelity, since that can impact settlements in some jurisdictions." I spent the rest of the day following her advice. I called the credit card companies and canceled Amanda's supplementary cards. I visited our bank and moved half of our joint account funds to a new individual account, leaving her share untouched, as advised by Sarah. I changed the passwords on our investment accounts and notified our insurance company of the separation. It felt cold and calculated, but as Sarah had explained, it was necessary self-protection, not revenge. 24 hours after Amanda had walked out, my phone rang with her number. I let it go to voicemail. "What the hell did you do?" her voice demanded. "My cards were declined at dinner. Call me back immediately." I did not call back. Instead, I forwarded the voicemail to Sarah as documentation of Amanda's first contact post-separation. Over the next day, the messages escalated. First angry demands, then threats to take everything, then surprisingly tearful pleas to talk things through. I maintained complete silence, following Sarah's advice to avoid any communication that could be used against me later. 48 hours after she left, mutual friends began reaching out. Apparently, Amanda was telling everyone that I had cut her off financially, without warning, making her sound like the victim. She conveniently left out the part about her affair with Jordan or her coldly planned exit. One particularly disturbing discovery came when I reviewed our credit card statements in detail. Amanda had spent thousands of dollars in the past few months on gifts, expensive watches, designer ties, and weekend getaways, all presumably for Jordan. I had been financing their affair without knowing it. Each new revelation hardened my resolve. This was not just about protecting my assets anymore. It was about standing up for myself after years of being taken advantage of. For the first time in our relationship, I was putting myself first. On the third day, after Amanda left, the doorbell rang at 7 in the morning. I opened it to find her standing there, eyes red and puffy from crying, wearing the same clothes she had left in. She looked disheveled and exhausted, nothing like the confident woman who had walked out 72 hours earlier. "Nick," she said, her voice breaking, Can I please come in? We need to talk." I stood in the doorway blocking her entrance. "You made it very clear, there was nothing to talk about." "I made a mistake," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "A terrible mistake. Please just let me explain." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside to let her in. She walked directly to the kitchen, our kitchen, and sat at the table as if she still belonged there. "Why are you here, Amanda?" I asked, remaining standing, keeping physical and emotional distance. "Jordan," she began, then stopped, looking down at her hands. "It was not what I thought it would be. What happened? Did he not leave his wife for you after all?" I could hear the bitterness in my voice. She flinched. "He said he would. He promised. But when I told him you had canceled the cards and I needed help financially until the divorce was settled, she trailed off. He ghosted you. I finished for her." The irony was almost too perfect. She nodded miserably. "I have been trying to reach him for 2 days. His wife answered his phone yesterday. She knew everything, Nick. She called me horrible names. Can you blame her?" "No," Amanda admitted. "I cannot blame anyone but myself. I made a terrible mistake. I threw away 8 years with a good man for someone who did not even have the decency to answer my calls." I stood there looking at my wife, the woman I had loved completely, the woman who had planned her exit from our marriage with cold precision, now asking for what? Forgiveness. A second chance, financial rescue. "What do you want from me, Amanda?" I asked directly. "I want to come home," she whispered. "I want us to try again. I know I hurt you terribly, but what we had was special. We could go to counseling, rebuild trust. People make mistakes, even horrible ones, and still find their way back." For a brief moment, I felt the pull of our history together, the comfort of the familiar. Then I remembered the text messages, the careful planning, the certification program that she had completed just before leaving. "No," I said quietly but firmly. "That is not going to happen." "Nick, please," she begged. "Where am I supposed to go? I have nowhere to stay. I have no money until I get my first paycheck from the new position." "The position you got with the certification I paid for," I pointed out. She had the decency to look ashamed. "I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I am desperate. Could you just help me until I get on my feet?" For old time's sake, I considered her request. Despite everything, I did not want Amanda homeless or desperate. Not out of love anymore, but out of basic human decency. "I will pay for a hotel for 1 week," I said finally. "That should give you time to figure out your next steps. After that, we will communicate through our lawyers only." The relief in her eyes was palpable. "Thank you, Nick. And maybe after some time passes we could." "No," I interrupted firmly. "There is no we anymore, Amanda. You made sure of that." After she left with the hotel confirmation, I sat alone in the quiet house and realized I felt something unexpected: peace. For the first time since she had walked out, I felt like I could breathe again. The following weeks and months were challenging but healing. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in betrayal trauma. I joined a support group for divorced men where I found understanding and practical advice from others who had walked this path before me. I poured myself into work, earning a promotion I had been putting off pursuing because it would have required more travel away from Amanda. I reconnected with friends she had subtly pushed out of our lives over the years. I discovered new interests: mountain hiking, photography, volunteer work at a local animal shelter. My friendship with Jason deepened. He never once said "I told you so," though he had every right. Instead, he included me in weekend plans, checked in regularly, and provided the brotherly support I desperately needed. The divorce proceedings moved forward more smoothly than I expected. With Sarah's expert guidance and faced with evidence of her infidelity, Amanda agreed to a settlement that was fair but far less than she had initially demanded. The house sold quickly, and I used my portion to purchase a smaller place closer to downtown, somewhere with no memories of her. 6 months after Amanda walked out, I received a letter from her. She had moved to another state for a fresh start, was seeing a therapist, and wanted to apologize properly for the pain she had caused. She did not ask for reconciliation, only forgiveness, for her sake and mine. I wrote back a brief civil response wishing her well. A year after our marriage ended, I realized something profound had changed within me. The betrayal still hurt when I thought about it, but it no longer defined me. I had built a new life, smaller in some ways, richer in others. I had learned to value myself independent of someone else's validation. I began dating again, cautiously at first. I was transparent about my past and the lessons I had learned. I set clearer boundaries and paid attention to actions rather than words. I did not look for someone to complete me because I had discovered I was already complete. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are, even if it breaks your heart. It is in that breaking where we find pieces of ourselves we never knew existed, stronger, wiser pieces that form a better foundation for whatever comes next. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal? Share your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and self-discovery. And remember, sometimes walking away is the first step toward finding yourself again. Thank you for listening, and may your own path lead to peace, whether through reconciliation or, as in my case, the courage to begin again.